Hey folks, Ray from Rainmaker.com here. Today I've got a bit of a roundup of CES 2019. I've seen a bunch of videos over the last couple of days drop, a bunch of posts on the site, all that kind of goodness. Figured I'd do a bit of a wrap up of CES 2019. CES being the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, basically the biggest electronics show there is out there in terms of this kind of stuff that we, consumer goods anyways. There's obviously different shows for like NAB for video stuff and Eurobike for bike stuff, etc. But this is the biggie. This is the one that all of the companies, all the technology companies out there aim for each year, or at least most of the companies. We'll talk about that in just a second. Treat this kind of like a live stream. I'm just going to kind of go through this unedited, one shot. I've got a list here of things I want to chat about, and that'll be that. We'll go until either my phone dies or the camera dies or until I'm done talking about stuff. So simple as that. Now, of course, CES is known for all of the craziness. Like, I was just walking through the North Hall, and the halls are roughly divided up by segments. So the North Hall is all like automotive stuff mostly. So I don't usually have a lot of reason to go there. So I kind of save it towards the end. And so I just did a quick walk through there. I'm not really a car guy, but still it's fun like looking at some of that stuff. Some of those cars you're like, that's crazy. That I don't know what to do with that. It's so crazy. There's a helicopter droney sort of thing from Bell Helicopter that's just unreal. There's a boat that's like bigger than any house I've ever owned in my life in there. Like there's all sorts of craziness. It's just kind of fun to look at. You can stand in lines for a lot of them and go up and inside of them. I didn't do that unfortunately, but it's fun to look at. And even when there's not like a practical thing from a sports tech standpoint that's obvious, sometimes it's a little bit below the surface. For example, last year Ford showed off a bunch of things they're doing around bike safety, for example, in vehicles and trying to avoid cyclists and stuff like that and automating a lot of that. And so, there's plenty of debate you can be had about whether drivers drivers should be paying more attention to the cyclists on the road, but at the end of the day, drivers just suck at that. And so the idea of trying to put technology in there to make it safer for us as cyclists is cool stuff. And there's other companies doing that as well, and that's going beyond into autonomous driving also. So that's all kind of fun stuff to see. And then you go into like the Central Hall, which is where all the big tech companies like the Samsungs, the LGs, Sony, all that kind of stuff is there. And that's like where you see these crazy displays that, TVs that roll up into little boxes that you can put there and they roll out again in like 10 seconds or so, or you can see these big, massive like bent TV. I mean, it's so like geeky fun stuff that you just want to walk through there no matter how into sports technology or technology in general you are. It's just fun to walk through there knowing that you're never going to buy these things. Like I'm not going to spend $100,000 on these TVs or whatever they cost, 10 grand on a TV. But eventually that technology does trickle down. Like, years and years ago, those 4K displays that cost $10,000 and $20,000 at these shows now cost $200, right? So technology gets there. I'm not sure if everything will get there, but it's definitely cool. One of the things that I certainly see a lot of questions on is, where are all the sports tech companies? Why aren't they here? And the answer is they're all here. They're just not necessarily on the show floor anymore. 2 years ago in 2016, or 2017 I guess, for CES, that was what I would consider the peak for sports tech stuff. That's when like all the money was spent on these elaborate booths that were way bigger than any American household would be. The huge booths. Some of them stretched like 30, 40 meters each direction and had multiple stories, all that kind of stuff. Like iFit had one back then that was known with like elaborate Las Vegas style shows that would go on every half an hour. iFit had people dancing on treadmills with shopping carts and running. It was unreal. I'm sure you can probably Google it somewhere on YouTube and find video clips of it. Crazy stuff. But there was very little payoff from that. And so we saw last year it shrunk quite a bit. And at that point, the fitness side was almost half of an entire hall. And these halls are, like 10 or 20 football fields in size. I mean, they're massive things. And so to see that fitness realm shrink, you would have said, oh, maybe fitness isn't doing as well. And the reality is I think companies are just getting smarter about where they're spending their money. And in particular, for those big companies, they're realizing there's no point. Like Fitbit 2 years ago had a booth that was massive as well, probably 30 meters by 50 meters, 30 by 40 meters, something like that, multiple stories, all that kind of stuff. But what they realize is that it's not money well spent. It's much better in most cases from a media coverage standpoint. And keeping in mind CES, the reason people come to the show is basically three buckets. Number one is media. There's thousands of media people like myself that are here that are going to cover your products, so you want media exposure. Number two is to meet with partners and vendors and stuff like that, retailers, all that kind of thing. those meetings happen here, and a lot of those meetings happen here. That's overwhelmingly what happens at this show, is companies meeting with companies about things. That's what trade shows are about. And then 3, there's just people here geeking out. That's what's going on back there, kind of behind me. That's that sort of thing. So those 3 categories. The first one is what's most important and why a lot of companies are going away from the big booths on the floor to more kind of quiet side booths. And so in the case of Fitbit, they can still have all those meetings and not have to pay for a booth. So they have suites. I think I have a picture right now of a suite that their suite is in. And basically, it's just, like a bunch of conference rooms where they can sit down and have those meetings. And if they want to bring media folks in there, they can do that. So the selected media or whoever go in there and do that. But for the most part, Fitbit in particular, for example, has shifted their media events to being media events by themselves. They're a big enough company that they can draw the media into their launch events and do that on their own. And we're seeing, certainly Samsung does that, Apple does that, and that's the general trend for these big companies. For smaller companies, it's a bigger deal. So if you're a smaller fitness tech company or any sort of tech company here, this is your chance to get in front of the world's tech media. And so that's a way that you can be in one place and get that attention, and it makes sense if you're smaller. But for the big companies, not as much. We're even seeing like Garmin, for example, kind of shifting their media focuses that way as well. They did a New York event, for example, for Spotify this past November. That I think you're going to see that trend continue as well, just sort of having these events that bring in the right people, that they get the coverage they want in the vertical they want, so whether it be fitness or automotive or marine, whatever it is, and that's a bigger bang for the buck. I mean, these booths here cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for just the booth space itself, just that little triangle on the floor, square on the floor, let alone before you spend another couple $100,000 on a booth design for it and then staffing it. I mean, see why it's maybe not worth it for a lot of companies. So suites are where it's at. That's where I do a lot of meetings. For example, Wahoo had a suite, Koros had a suite, First Beat had a suite. I mean, lots of people have suites. They sound fancy. They're really not. They're just rooms. It's simply hotel rooms, or just simply places where you can go and have a meeting. That's all it is. So that's where people are. That's where a lot of these companies are, which then gets to the second part about what about all the announcements. So this year, from a sports tech standpoint, for the products I cover, it was definitely the lowest year I've seen at CES, which again doesn't mean people aren't here. Every single company that I cover is here at the show, just not necessarily on the show floor, not necessarily announcing because of the fact that they can get a bigger bang for their buck, announcing somewhere else. There's no Fitbit announcement here. Garmin made an announcement we'll talk about in just a second. Apple announced, back in September. So that's the people are just shifting where they're announcing things, and that makes a lot of sense. The other thing to keep in mind, I mentioned this before, is that when it comes to like announcement weeks, so behind me is Engadget's got a huge thing there, and Wire, and all these companies have big stuff there. If you look at their site over the last couple of days, there's 100, 200 tech posts per day coming out of those sites for coverage here. At one point on Sunday or Monday, I did a screenshot on Twitter, and it was like 60 posts in the last 2.5 hours. It's absolutely bonkers. So your coverage for a new product here, it's gone. Like it's so far down the list that if you're announcing something, it's not really worth it almost. And so that's another reason why we see lower numbers. Still, let's talk about what we have seen, kind of my thoughts on it. Number one, Garmin released their Vivo. I'm just doing this, by the way, order that they announced them. So this is a simple, chronological order. The first thing of the week, from my standpoint, was Garmin's Vivo Active 3 LTE on Verizon's network. That's their first cellular-enabled product out there. And I think for a lot of people, that was kind of a dud, and I would sort of agree with that, to be honest. And it's not that Garmin did anything wrong there per se. It's just that it's not applicable to so many people. It's only on Verizon, it's only in the US, it's only on the Vivo Active 3, it's got a bunch of limitations on it. It's certainly Garmin's first shot at that, and that's a product that I would be polite in saying it's a long time coming. Not like I'm saying like we've been expecting for a long time, like that's a product they've been working on for a long, long time. And this was definitely like the finally got it out the door moment after a lot of attempts. I don't think I'm allowed to say how many attempts, but it's a lot of attempts. So they finally got the door. They had to start somewhere. I wouldn't personally buy it, not because I don't live in this area, but I think it's just too many catches, too many caveats for it. The fact that it doesn't have Wi-Fi in it means that if you're downloading music to it, you have to do it on the LTE plan. The LTE plan costs between $10 and $25. That part's not yet clear. So like you're spending a lot of money to not get a lot. You can't actually stream on it because the platforms don't support it yet, and that's a whole complexity thing by itself. So that means you're downloading music before you start your run. If you're doing that, just do it at home. Now certainly there's the flip side of that is if I'm traveling here and I don't have unprotected Wi-Fi hotspots, then that makes sense. But for most people, I don't think it's going to make a lot of sense, and the pricing isn't known and stuff like that. So that's a bit of a kind of a tricky duck. I think that's certainly where the technology starts, and we'll see that go from there on to other areas. But got to start somewhere. I think that's where they started. Next thing I saw was the Matrix Power Watch 2. I did a post on that. That's the solar and body heat powered watch. So that's the one that you put on your wrist, and it uses the body heat and solar to give it life. There's no other way of charging it that they've talked about. It just simply that's that. This is actually the second product they've launched, also on the crowdfunding site on Indiegogo, and it's cool from a technology standpoint. It's cool to see like what's in the realm of possible. We've seen like companies try solar watches in the past and stuff like that, but not a GPS powered one. It's the first GPS powered solar watch out there. From the body heat standpoint, I think that's mostly a gimmick. The returns on body heat is so minuscule. I've talked to companies who have, over the last few days, who have looked at that technology, because Matrix play here isn't so much their own watch, it's to license the technology to other companies. And when they looked at the numbers on the body heat, is like, it's just not worth it. What's interesting to these companies though is solar, and that's something that Matrix doesn't really corner the market on. Other companies can do solar stuff by themselves. So I think it's going to be a tough licensing play for Matrix, especially to the bigger companies. It may make sense to the smaller companies, but for the bigger companies, the Fitbits, the Garmins, the whoever's of the world, they would probably just do their own thing. It doesn't make sense for them to deal with a smaller company. From a licensing standpoint, they would just either buy them out or whatnot, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Still, I'm interested in watching where Power Watch goes. Right now the biggest challenge they have is only 60, 90 minutes battery life on GPS, which it's not great, but they think they can get to the every forever power sort of thing, like every day forever power using solar. If they can get there, that's the future. I think the immediate step though is that you have a watch that you power and then you use solar to like top it up. So it's not so great in the winter when your clothes are over it, but in the summer when you're running that Ultra and it's a 24-hour Ultra, this gets that battery that extra 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% because you're out in the sun a long time. And the sun is where the most benefit from the solar side of it comes from, or from that whole equation of body heat versus solar. Next, the Withings ECG watch, Move ECG watch. Really cool stuff. It's kind of funny to see different people's responses on that. That's the $120 or $129 ECG capable watch. Sorry if you can hear this back there. It's getting pretty crazy. So it's like almost happy hour time here, and kind of like technically the show's open tomorrow as well on Friday, but most people head out of here. I've got other stuff tomorrow, so I can't really talk about that. I'll talk about in general what sort of my week looks like later on. Anyways, Withings Move ECG, it's a cool little watch that basically it's an activity tracker, but it has FDA-approved ECG capabilities, very similar, almost identical actually to what Apple's done in their Series 4 watches that cost $400. This costs $129. And there's a lot of discussion around whether or not ECG is something that's like good for people to know about. Frankly, that's like the dumbest conversation I've heard. And the basis of that, like the critical aspect of that, is people saying you're going to go into hospitals, it's going to fill hospitals up with people that are looking at their watch, getting an ECG that says that they should go see a doctor, and that ECG could be wrong. We haven't seen that, and this is what gets lost in the conversation. Like Verge, I love The Verge, but they did a really crappy video 2 days ago about this whole thing where they like sliced and diced a bunch of doctors' quotes together, and it was just poorly done. And what they missed in this whole thing, this conversation of, the hospital's gonna be flooded with patients that are seeing this and they're false, hasn't happened. Like, remember, ECG was released over a month ago to Apple Watch Series 4. So we're talking millions of watches out there got this update overnight, and there's been no reports. Like, there's not been a single news article out there that says doctors have been flooded with patients that are incorrect. On the contrary, we've seen news reports, even as this morning, in fact, of cases where people have gone in after getting an Apple Watch reading and finding out they had a serious condition and can get that treated. Conditions that you're going to drop dead sort of from. So just not seeing it. There are some questions around accuracy, but that's, in my opinion, better left to the FDA. That's what they do. That's their whole purpose in life, is talking about whether or not something is suitable as a medical device, and these devices go through that same exact process as blood pressure monitors and other things like that. Slightly different, like, portion. That gets too technical, but the same concept is there. So like, you can get a blood pressure monitor for home. You would use that. You go to your doctor for guidance and diagnosis. That's what these devices are for. It's to raise awareness of things that could be life-threatening, and to allow you to go to your doctor and then from there figure out whether or not it makes sense, whether or not the device could be wrong. That's also a possibility, but that's the point of a doctor. That's why you have them there. And it just, again, we haven't seen this become an issue like some people are predicting. I think it's more like fear-mongering at that point. Next, 4eyes. I just did this, you saw this, I did this 10 minutes ago, but you'll see this a day or two ago. They released a bunch of cool stuff. One is that, they announced, they didn't really officially release anything. One is they showed off a power meter with tracking that's basically due to theft tracking, and using tile-like technology called Chipotle, I can't remember this time of the day. It's not Chipotle tracking. Chipotle is a great burrito chain. It's not that, but it's like tile and tracker tracking. I apologize to the company that I can't remember their name anymore. But using that in your power meter, so they could potentially enable this in power meters to do theft tracking. So if your power meter gets stolen, it's more or less like you've stolen your bike permanently, because it's a crankset, and most thieves aren't going to take it off the crankset. But that's broadcasting out this beacon continuously, super ultra low power beacon. And it's now, like, anyone who walks by that has a phone app on that's running in the background, which is millions and millions of people with these apps, are going to flag that. And all of a sudden your bike will show up somewhere, and it gives the GPS location and all that kind of fun stuff. That's super cool. Now, what's more interesting in some ways from a tech standpoint on this is that this is like a concept for 4eyes. It's not really what they, like, the technology is great. It'll make a marketing thing, whatever, on their power meters, but they want to pitch that technology to other companies, other embedded devices out there. So it could be wearables, it could be like things in your car, who knows, it could be anything they want. They can pitch it on top of certain chipsets. So that's coming from their subsidiary company that's spun up called Obvious. And I've kind of made fun of this a little bit. Like, 4eyes has a really interesting way with product names and company names and stuff, with all the extra eyes, and now they went with Obvious, but whatever, it works, it's memorable. And so that's that first part there. The second part is they want to do basically an embedded device app store. And so they have a bit of a partnership of sorts with Nordic Semiconductor, which is what makes the chipsets in almost every single sports technology device out there, and a vast number of other smaller consumer devices as well, where they can do all the work for doing firmware updates with new features, and that you pay through an app store. So if you take a company like Garmin, for example, I don't think Garmin watches them right now, but if you take a company like Garmin, they have the entire over-the-air app firmware updating system figured out. Like, that's just their thing. They understand that, it works really well. But a smaller company, so like a Kinetic, for example, Kinetic trainers, or even to some degree like a Polar watches, like an Apex or a Chorus Apex would be a great example of this. The whole process of doing firmware updates is a bit of a nightmare for these companies over the air. So it's really tricky. There's a lot of ways it can go wrong. So for smaller companies, that's a tough bar to jump over. What's even more tough, though, is doing payment unlocks. So the idea that you could pay $5 on an app on your phone, and then go ahead and unlock a feature on your watch, because that takes a firmware change in most cases, or it takes a feature unlock change. It also takes payment processing. It takes tons and tons of overhead that small companies simply can't deal with. Even Garmin doesn't have payment processing on their site, because it's such a headache to deal with, especially across multiple currencies. So what 4eyes wants to do, or Obvious to be more precise, is they want to inject themselves in the middle there. So they're offering APIs on iOS and on Android, where a company can go ahead and hand off to them all of the payment processing, all of the authorization for the device. So they track the serial number of your watch in this example. That says, hey, this person just unlocked a new feature. They unlocked the sleep feature or whatever. And now that watch will get a new firmware. They handle the firmware process. They handle portions of firmware, like cool stuff. And I would have thought there was like already a solution out there, but it doesn't sound like there is. So this is an interesting thing. I'm really curious to see where this goes. Keep in mind that, I kind of like joked with these guys when I was meeting with them, and I said, why would people want this from like a small Canadian fitness company? And they said, well, we've got really a lot of experience in technology. And that's true. The founder of 4eyes is the founder of Amp Plus before he sold it off to Garmin. And before Bluetooth Smart came along, and plus that was like the low power profile sensor communication type network. That was the best option out there, and that's now scaled to tens of millions, if not maybe even 100 million devices that ANT+ is there. So the company certainly has like the knowledge to do technology. This isn't just like a random power meter company kind of sticking the nose where they don't belong. Anyways, cool stuff there. Speaking of API stuff, Suunto announced a number of things. One of the more like tangible one up front is the ability to now link the Suunto app side of their multi-platform scenario right now to Training Peaks. So that's cool. And then also showing a little bit of like hints what's coming down the road with workouts probably going the other direction as well. And that's something that's not there today, but I think we'll see down the road here. Certainly helping to fill in those gaps. That's one of the challenges Suunto's had, is no way to get structured workouts onto the watch from other platforms where everyone else has that, and I think that's certainly hurting them. They've also opened up a bit more of their API, and it's something they've kind of talked about in the past. They have what's called MoveSense, which is sensors that companies can leverage, and lots of companies are doing that. But the software platform of that, like if you want to get data into Suunto's platforms from a software standpoint, even just workout data, that's always been a bit less than awesome. So they've opened this platform up now, APIs. It's not as simple as like you just go there and you know, sign up like you could Strava API and just works instantly, but it's like one step away from that. So right now, you go there, you apply, you say what you want to do, and they'll pretty much send you credentials back. They're saying for the next week or two, it might be a bit slow as they catch up from CES, but once they've caught up, it'll be a lot faster. I sort of challenged them, but I'm actually really challenging you to force them to do that, which isn't me saying like, give Suunto a hard time. It's me saying, go off and develop. If you're a developer, go do something cool. Like, I want simple things sometimes, like a way to have all my workouts automatically sync from Suunto to Dropbox. Like, that is the scenario I talked to them about, that they said if some developer wants to come to them and do that, they are there. So I'm challenging someone to do that, and then when you're done, email me that you've done that, and I will talk about it, because I think that's something I love to see across all platforms. I like, you know, data flowing, and you as a consumer to own your data. Let's see, let me check, my microphone is still recording, so that is good. Suunto API we talked about. Let's see, drones and action cameras, nothing much too big here to be honest, which isn't surprising. You know, DJI had a really busy fall with lots of announcements, even into December. It was unlucky they're going to turn right back around to CES and make any meaningful announcements in the consumer space. Their next big show would be NAB in April, where they would do like the enterprise space a bit more. But you know, DJI beats their own drum in terms of announcements. So I wouldn't necessarily like tie to any trade show, because again, they can demand audience, the media come to them these days, and that works just fine. GoPro is here, no announcements from them at all. You know, they obviously have a pretty rigid September schedule for releases. Whether we'll see them move away from that, I don't know, but certainly when I'm filming this on right now, the DJI Pocket Osmo should be giving them pause. It's something that like I've been using for all my filming here. And, granted, not all my filming here at CES has been like the most awesome quality, mostly because I'm still learning this camera myself and how to use it in this environment. But it's super impressive what this can do as I start to use it more and more. It's tiny, it's smaller than my cell phone. It's like half the size of my cell phone. So for these sort of trade shows, it's been awesome for me because I'm not having to like carry a bunch of stuff with me. This rig right now is set up on, oddly enough, a GoPro 3-way tripod with the Osmo Pocket on top of it. I'll take a picture, maybe and overlay it if I remember. So in fact, I'll do that right now so I don't forget, because otherwise I will forget how it's set up. So you can see right there, just simply on top. And I'm actually using the microphone adapter right now. So I said I wasn't doing multiple cuts. I didn't do multiple cuts because I just showed you that video and it cut out my audio. But anyways, some cool stuff there. I think it's neat to see you know, new entrants in the space. I think it's pretty obvious to most people that DJI will get into the action camera business eventually. And this is like getting super close to that. So I'm interested to see how GoPro reacts to that and some of the stuff there. Beyond that, a couple other interesting things is I actually went out on Sunday, I think it was, and I went riding with Stages, with their new Stages Dash computers that they announced way back at Eurobike. Again, by the time I drop this video, you may already see that video. I haven't really decided on the exact timing. If not, you'll see it in the next couple of days. But God, I go out and finally ride those things. They are coming soonish. They're saying February. I think March is more realistic. But good stuff. Like, it's definitely, they're fully functional. And it's funny because as we finished up this couple-hour ride, the guy said to me, you know, what do you think? And I said, just works, which I said it's not like I don't mean that in a bad way, like it worked great, which is, it's tough because sometimes on like head units and GPS watches when you're out doing workouts, the bar is simple. The bar is, did it not fail? It's not like, did it, like shoot fireworks off or do something crazy? The bar is simple. Did it work? And in this case, it worked just great. Like the workout functionality worked, the routing worked, the GPS was accurate, the sensors worked. All of those things worked, and sometimes that's just what I want from a head unit. These head units, the stages L10, L50, and M50, they're at 149, 249, and 349. 3 different sizes, 2 of them are color, the more expensive ones with mapping on them and stuff like that. They're cool. I think the biggest challenge stages will have is how are they uniquely cool? Like they're great, they're fine, but how are they better than a Garmin or better than a Wahoo or better than someone else? And that's a little bit tougher story to tell, and I think that's where they are definitely better in certain categories, like structure workouts. Stages blows away everyone else. Like it's not even close. Like it's like racing a Hot Wheels car versus a Maserati. Like it's not even the same department anymore. Where it's trickier though, and where Stages tends to lag behind, is some of those other features that are things that some people would say are like frivolous, but they're also important. Like for example, Stages doesn't have Strava Live segment, so that's a challenge there. Those sort of things are a bit of the differentiators that'll be tricky for them. Still, I'm looking forward to it. I think like the $149 unit is just amazing price value. That's like the best bang for your buck out there for a GPS unit that has all the structure stuff in it, has course following, all that kind of stuff. Super, super cool. The 249 is definitely probably the sweet spot though in terms of being a competitor with the Wahoo Bolt and the Garmin Edge 520 Plus series in that realm there. That is, I think, my whole list here. I don't have any more lists. Hopefully the audio is usable on this entire thing. That's what's going on out there, so it's what it is. Thanks for watching. I'm hoping that you enjoyed all the coverage here. It's certainly tricky to like figure out what people want and do it in a very fast manner. It's always tough at the shows because it's just like non-stop from usually 5 and 6 in the morning till late at night with meetings and stuff like that, which gets into one of the things people may wonder, like, is it worth it coming to shows like this for me when there's only, a few major announcements? Like, I only had, I think, 5 or 6 posts this week that are like new product announcements. And a lot of what I come to these shows for is the meetings that happen around these shows. And so it's talking to companies about products that are coming up and talking to companies things that they're envisioning down the road. And so I'm meeting with companies all day long, every single day, even though I can't really show you all those things. So some of those things may never come to fruition. Some of those things may come to fruition in just a couple of weeks. And that's what I spend a lot of my time on. So I'm spending all day tomorrow on is working on going out and trying out something for the first time that you'll hear about in February. And so for me, that's where a lot of benefit comes from, is that meeting with those companies and giving the feedback from you guys on what you like and don't like, hopefully early on in the product cycle, to be able to say, no, that idea is stupid, or that idea is awesome. Keep on doing that. And so that's where I try to consolidate all your feedback into these sort of meetings that take the majority of my time. So even though it may look kind of quiet and you're like, oh, Ray got to hang out in Vegas for a week, and we only got 5 posts out of it, that's what goes on behind the scenes. And there's of course time to like edit videos and stuff, which is why I'm doing this as a one-shot wonder. So one big shot, just stick it up there and call it done. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed CES 2019. If you found this interesting, whack that like button. If it's the first time you're at the channel, hit the subscribe button. I think I'm really close to 100K. Don't tell anyone. I'm sort of excited about that. I don't know what happens after that. Like that, then I hit it and it goes over and you're like, it's done. But I appreciate all the support for those who have been watching all along, and those that made it to the 30-minute marker on this video, or 29-minute and something odd seconds. Thank you very much. With that, have a good one and enjoy.
Position, speed, and rotation of the ball, how the player moves, and how they move their paddle. That blue skeleton on screen there is synchronized with our player's motions. This improved sensing lets Scorpius play at higher speed and with greater precision, just like an advanced table tennis player. In the real world, this sensing helps manufacturers in all verticals improve their processes.